Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. As always, I'm Bryson Carver. It is great to have you all on this beautiful Thursday afternoon / evening, whatever time you are at in the country, or even around the world. If you're around the world, thank you very much for watching this show. We've got a lot to talk about on this Thursday. Training camp starting to wind down. The last week of the preseason kicks off tonight. We got a few games. Tom Brady, by the way, is coming back this weekend. I don't think Tampa plays tonight. I think it's either tomorrow or on Saturday. But the point is, we're going to get a little bit of Tom Brady action on the football field before the regular season after his 2-week absence. But we're not going to be talking about that today. Chet Holmgren, hate to hear this news, but he is done for the season before he even plays his first NBA game after suffering a foot injury. I'll discuss that, as well as Patrick Beverley being traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. This is pure comedy for me as a Warriors fan, but I do think it sort of represents a bigger plan that the Lakers have, and I think it's not very hard to see what that is. I'll discuss that. More Patriots offensive struggles in training camp. I've got a couple of tweets here from a respected reporter in the New England area. It's bad. Like it's worse than even I thought. I'll discuss that, as well as the second topic of the day, of course, Tyron Smith's big injury and a big loss for the Dallas Cowboys, and why that points to a lack of good organizational structure. But first, the news that we got around late morning on Tuesday, that Kevin Durant, the saga, thank God, is finally over. It's been nearly 2 months. Of course, we all know he requested to be traded out of Brooklyn on June the 30th. Today is August the 25th, so 5 days short of being a 2-month sort of back and forth, will they, won't they saga, as as it pertains to the Nets, whether or not they will have traded Kevin Durant. But he is going to stay with the Brooklyn Nets. He, along with the Brooklyn Nets brass, had released a joint statement on Tuesday saying, quote, Steve Nash and I, together with Joe Tsai and his wife, met with Kevin Durant and Rich Kleiman, Kevin Durant's agent, in Los Angeles yesterday. We have agreed to move forward with our partnership. We are focusing on basketball with one collective goal in mind: build a lasting franchise to bring a championship to Brooklyn. So there you go. Kevin Durant staying in Brooklyn. He's not going anywhere. So first of all, yes, Brooklyn is at least in the bubble to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. I have said, I'll get to how it plays out more for KD individually in just a second. But in the Eastern Conference, it is Milwaukee and Boston, to me, are without question the class of the East. If you want to say Milwaukee's better than Boston, Boston's better than Milwaukee, you have at it. But to me, those are clearly the two best teams. Both teams, I thought, could have competed with Golden State and possibly beaten Golden State in the finals. Okay, we know Boston got there and did have a 2-1 lead on my Warriors, who I'm repping today, of course. But to me, they got better in the offseason. Okay, Milwaukee got better, added some pieces, as did Boston. Boston added even more pieces than Milwaukee did. Okay, Philadelphia is good, should be better. I don't see them as in the class with Milwaukee and Boston. Okay, Miami is always going to hang around. I don't think they have enough offensive, firepower to compete with those two teams. They can compete in the defensive end of the floor without question, but it felt like last year at the end, it was Jimmy Butler or bust, right? Kyle Lowry fell apart. Bam Adebayo didn't show up in the playoffs. It was kind of Jimmy Butler or bust. And if that's the case, you need sort of that extra 1-2 punch to go along with Jimmy Butler, if not to even be better than Jimmy Butler at this stage in the playoffs. Brooklyn is in that sort of Philadelphia, Miami area. I'm not sure that they're as good as Miami today. Okay. We know they kept some of their pieces in the offseason. They kept Patty Mills. They kept Nick Claxton. They brought back, they traded for Royce O'Neal. Okay. So some nice moves, good to keep some of the pieces that they kept. Joe Harris coming back, Steph Curry coming back. But that's not a championship basketball team. As I always say about the Nets, and I always say about any sort of bubble contender, if I have more questions than answers about you, if I have to say, if he stays healthy or if he's ready to go, if, can't do it. Not to mention the Nets don't have a very good coach in Steve Nash, who I have tremendous respect for as a human being and certainly as a basketball player. But he was not qualified to get that job. The only reason he got that job was because of Kevin Durant. That's why I thought it was incredibly ironic that KD was the guy who wanted him fired. But that's another discussion for another day. But in the bigger picture, This is a pretty bad look for Kevin Durant, who I've always been a fan of. I've been a fan of KD ever since his OKC days. Love watching that man play basketball. I love the way he plays basketball, right? We all know the guy makes scoring look like making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. He makes it look effortless. We understand that defensively, I feel like he's always been underrated in that department. A few years ago, as I always bring up, he was top 5 in the NBA in block shots. Okay, he's an underrated passer, solid rebounder. He is a great basketball player. In my view, he's the 14th or 15th greatest basketball player to ever live. 2-time Finals MVP, regular season MVP in 2014. We get what this man has accomplished. But the one thing that he hasn't done that I don't think he ever will do, sort of in that Kawhi Leonard territory, is build a culture and lead a team to a championship. That's what LeBron has done in basically 3 different destinations. Well, he didn't build the culture in Miami, but he certainly led the Heat to those titles in 2012 and 2013. But he built that culture in Cleveland and won a championship. He built that culture in LA and led them to a championship. Steph has done this in Golden State. Giannis did it in Milwaukee. If we want to go back further, Dirk did it in Dallas. Duncan did it 5 times in San Antonio. KD and Kawhi Leonard are the same dude. We can argue who's better all day long, but if we're talking about guys in terms of talent, top 5 in the world. If we're talking about guys who you plug into a team that is ready to win now, you've got not a good chance, a great chance to win the championship, as we saw with Kawhi in San Antonio and Kawhi in Toronto, and as we saw with KD in Golden State. But if you are asking them to lead not your team, it's different, lead your team, lead a franchise, be the heartbeat of the franchise, be sort of the conscience of the franchise. No. If you're asking them to overcome subpar coaching or a roster that maybe isn't perfect, that's not their expertise, if you will. KD was sort of trying to, do like a little power move, right? Which, being Kevin Durant, maybe one could say, hey, I don't blame him, right? Accomplishing what he's accomplished. He just completed his 15th season in the NBA. He's going into year 16. He's still in his prime, but his prime is, winding down a little bit. He's probably got another 2, 3, 4 great years left. He wants to capitalize on it now. Okay, fine. But it told me everything that I needed to know when I started to see 2 things. Number 1, the fact that the Nets were shopping KD. It wasn't always the case where other teams were calling the Nets. That was the case in certain situations, but like say in Minnesota, there were some talks between the Timberwolves and the Nets about a KD trade. It was the Nets who called the Timberwolves and asked about a trade for Kevin Durant. And the second thing I noticed was the teams that were in the running to go get KD, the trade packages were kind of insulting for a player that great. Just recently, Shams Charania reported that the Grizzlies, and I talked about this on my show on Monday, that the Grizzlies were in talk with the Nets to go get Kevin Durant. As long as they didn't have to give up, obviously they weren't giving up John Morant to face their franchise, but as long as they didn't have to give up Jaren Jackson Jr. or Desmond Bane. Well, you can't expect to get a guy that great without giving up your first, second, or third best players. That's just not realistic. Okay, Phoenix was in talks with Brooklyn to go get KD, as long as they didn't have to give up Chris Paul, DeAndre Ayton, or Devin Booker. Well, in that case, you can't get KD. You can't do it. Boston wasn't willing to give up a first-round pick or 2 extra to go get KD. They were willing to basically bet on guys who aren't even going to wear a Celtics uniform, much less be great in a Celtics uniform for another 3, 4, 5 years, as opposed to getting a great Kevin Durant now. That told me everything I needed to know. The Nets, in some instances, were shopping KD, whereas for most franchises, especially desperate franchises like the Nets, you get a guy that great, you go out of your way to keep him in the building. They weren't. Also, the teams that were calling Brooklyn, the trade packages don't exactly cut it for a guy who's won 4 scoring titles, 2 finals MVPs, a regular season MVP, and is still in his prime. And who some debate, I don't, but some debate whether or not he is the best player in the world. Like they were talking like role players and like, starters, not even all-stars, just starters and role players and a couple draft picks. That's not going to cut it. So this is a bad look for KD because we understand now with 4 years left in his deal, this wasn't going to be like a Kawhi Leonard situation in Toronto where it's a 1-year rental. In that case, you can understand why teams maybe back off a little bit because like, okay, timeout. Why on earth, as great as Kawhi is and as great as we will be with him this year, we're giving up all of these assets, all of these guys that are going to be good for us for years to come just for one great year because he's going to leave us in free agency. Whereas for KD, he's got 4 years left. You can compete for a championship all 4 years. Build the team around him. And so in a situation where an organization like Brooklyn that has catered to each and every one of KD's demands, firing Kenny Atkinson, hiring Steve Nash, going out, giving up all the depth that the Nets had. We're talking Karis LeVert. We are talking Taurean Prince. We are talking Jared Allen. We're talking Spencer Dinwiddie. Well, they didn't trade Dinwiddie in that Harden deal. But all of these, giving up all kinds of depth and defense and scoring off the bench and interior presence to go get James Harden. It was KD's call, along with Kyrie's call. Brooklyn's catered to their every demands because Brooklyn doesn't usually get guys as great as Kevin Durant. And in this instance, Brooklyn stood pat. Joe Tsai, the owner, stood pat. KD went to Joe Tsai and said, it's me or it's Steve Nash, the head coach, and the general manager, Sean Marks. And essentially, Joe Tsai said, bet. All right. And he won the stare down. So this is going to be a very, very interesting camp for the Nets. Certainly an interesting early season for the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, the NBA took them off of a lot of nationally televised games because they weren't sure exactly if KD was going to be there this year, or even if Kyrie was going to possibly get traded. Him being in the last year of his of his contract with the Nets, and considering that he, I believe, is going to leave to go to the Lakers next year. So the Brooklyn Nets won this whole standoff in a landslide. And in some ways, we'll see as the future plays out, but in some ways, sort of took back the power of the franchise from Kevin Durant. Listen, as the old cliche goes, but man, it's true. With great power comes great responsibility. And I said in the show when the report came out a couple weeks ago that KD had this meeting with Joe Tsai, the owner, and basically said me or them being the head coach and general manager, me or them. I said, KD, great power comes great responsibility. You had great power. You won one playoff series. You have not earned the responsibility or earned the power to make that kind of call. LeBron can, and LeBron has in the past. Steph can if he wanted to. Giannis can if he wanted to. As I said on the show, if any of those three guys went to the front office and said, either you fire the coach or I'm out, I'm done, the coach is getting fired. Even in Golden State, it would hurt them badly to fire a guy as accomplished and as great a head coach as Steve Kerr is. But if it meant keeping Steph Curry, they'd have done it. They'd have probably tried to work some out, but if push came to shove, they'd have fired Steve Kerr before they're trading Steph Curry. It's like if it were a situation in Chicago back in the 90s and say Michael Jordan had a certain trade demand and he said, either you trade me or fire Phil Jackson, trust me, they'd have fired Phil Jackson for other reasons. Obviously we know that Jerry Krause, the GM, didn't like Phil Jackson at all, but they'd have fired Phil Jackson for the trade Michael Jordan. But the Nets in this case, nah. We're probably just as well aware as everybody else that Steve Nash is not a very good head basketball coach, at least in the NBA. I mean, as I've said before in the show, when you watch the Nets offense run their offense, I'm not sure they run an offense. It's basically just give the ball to KD or give the ball to Kyrie or give the ball to any of our individual scorers and just everybody get out of the way. They don't really run much pick and roll. They certainly don't move the ball very well. It's just kind of pick up basketball. The Nets know this just like everybody else and still said, nah. See who wins this standoff. And ultimately, it was the Brooklyn Nets. So this is not a great look for Kevin Durant when it's all said and done at all. And so, but the fact that it ended like it did, I can't say I'm stunned, especially like I said, the teams that were offering deals to trade for KD, the packages weren't great. I mean, Phoenix is saying, sure, we'll trade for him as long as we don't have to give up CP3, Devin Booker, or DeAndre Ayton. It's like, well, that's it. Then who are you going to trade? I mean, Mikal Bridges and a first-round pick, is that it? If you're the Memphis Grizzlies, okay, we're not going to trade Jaren Jackson or Desmond Bane. Well, then what are we doing here? Is Steven Adams? I mean, come on now. And then the other side for the Nets, they were calling teams. They talked to Golden State. Remember I talked about whether or not maybe a KD Golden State reunion happens? Brooklyn called Golden State. Now, what Brooklyn wanted was ridiculous. They wanted Wiggins, Poole, Wiseman, Kuminga, Moody, and like 5 first-round picks. It's like, bro, no. I said on this show, even as a Warriors fan, I'd love KD. A KD return, great. Makes us the overwhelming favorites to win the championship again. But I'm not doing it past an Andrew Wiggins, James Wiseman, Moses Moody, and like 2-3 first-round picks. I'm not giving up Kuminga. I'm not giving up Poole along with that deal. So, KD's back in Brooklyn. I don't know if he's going to be disgruntled a year from now. We'll see. I mean, again, if he was mad in Golden State, which is literally the most ask former players, retired players that played in Golden State. More specifically, ask retired players that only spent like a year, 2 years in Golden State. Guys like Matt Barnes or Zaza Pachulia. Role player guys that play with the Warriors briefly. Ask them about the player-friendly environment. They rave about the ownership, about Steve Kerr, how, it's a family-friendly franchise, right? You can bring your wife, bring your kids on trips. Like, it's very family-friendly, very player-friendly. It's just open communication with the coach. And KD was mad with that. He had a superstar, a guy who frankly is better. Steph Curry basically said, hey, here's the keys to Mercedes. Drive us to a championship. And he was mad at that. So I can't see, to me, the ceiling for the Nets. If things go perfectly, is they survive the second round, gets to the Eastern Conference Finals. My prediction, they win a close first-round series, depending on what matchup they get. One more thing before we move on. I know I've spent a lot of time on Kevin Durant, but when we think about the best teams in the East, I think we would all agree in no particular order, 5 best teams in the Eastern Conference. Bucks, Celtics, Heat, 76ers, Nets. I would put the Nets over the Chicago Bulls. Those 5. By simple math, one of those teams will not play in the second round. So what Brooklyn's got to hope for is that they get a 3-2 or, best case scenario, the 1 seed. Because if they get the 4 seed or 5 seed, they'll have to play like a Miami or a Philadelphia. And to me, it's a coin flip. I would take Miami for sure to beat them. Philly, I'm not so certain. I'd probably take Brooklyn to beat Philly, but it'd be a close series. But I feel like they're a second round team this year. I don't feel like this is a championship or bust type situation with the Brooklyn Nets. I don't. But listen, I mean, it's chaos. But then again, we shouldn't be terribly surprised. Never forget last year, before even all the chaos started. Obviously, you had the Kyrie Vax stuff, but you still had KD, you still had James Harden, you still had a very good basketball team. And my Golden State Warriors walk in the Barclays Center. My man, shout out to Barry Grant Jr., All Even Podcast. He was there in the arena that night. And I remember, you can check if you want to dig deep into my Twitter, but I remember tweeting around that time. It was like the first quarter, and Steph had gotten a little bit on a roll, right? He'd hit like 2-3 straight threes. And you could hear the cheering from the crowd. I'm like, they're in Brooklyn, right? They're not in the Chase Center, right? And then at the end of the game, the ultimate stinger, the ultimate insult to KD is when Steph Curry in Brooklyn, in KD's house, is getting MVP chance. It's like, whoa. Time out here. Now, some of that is because the Nets just don't have a very big fan base. Part of that is because some real legit true blue Nets fans have been kind of priced out of going to games because, with the superstar that KD and Kyrie brings, Barclays Center is going to charge more for tickets. This happened at Oracle Arena years ago, right? When the Warriors got good, especially when they added KD, the tickets were already sky high. You had a guy like Kevin Durant have an unstoppable team. Prices are through the roof. And you priced a lot of the True Blue Warriors fans, True Blue members of Dub Nation out of going to games at the old Oracle Arena. And so maybe that happens somewhat in Brooklyn. But at the end of the day, I think it's a second-round exit. And if they're a 4 or 5 seed and they play a Miami or Philly, not sure they'll even get there. But we'll see. But it is, man, it is something else. This whole, I'm just glad it's over, to be completely honest with you. I'm just glad this whole fiasco is a wrap, at least for a year. I mean, does KD get disgruntled again a year from now when Golden State goes back-to-back, which we're going to do? If you think I'm crazy, I told you we were going to win last year, and, we did that. We'll see. All right, moving on to the NFL. Bad news for the Dallas Cowboys. Tyron Smith is out till December. According to multiple reports, he suffered a serious knee injury. According to Adam Schefter, he suffered a torn hamstring. According to Schefter, Tyron Smith's hamstring tore and came off the bone. He could have surgery as early as today, which, by the way, we ended up finding out he's going to have surgery tomorrow morning. So, of course, we wish Tyron Smith the best in his in the surgery and certainly in his recovery from that. And we'll see whether or not he's able to come back soon for the Dallas Cowboys. This is, once again, another indictment of Jerry Jones and of the entire Cowboys front office. They've known full well for, what are we giving this, 4 years now? More or less 4 years that Tyron Smith's been injury prone. I mean, just 2 years ago, he played, what was it, 2 games? I think it was like 2-3 games back in the 2020 season, and like after week 4, he didn't play. He dealt with injuries a year ago, early in the season. Okay, right out the bat, gone until December. Okay, Jerry Jones, and I'm about to play a Jerry Jones soundbites, but he was on First Take this morning, which was a very entertaining episode, The Star, but he was on First Take saying Tyron Smith will be back for the playoffs. Well, if the Cowboys make the playoffs, that's January. So that could be like a full month after when he is projected to come back, again, depending on how the surgery goes, how his recovery goes. This is on Dallas. They knew Tyron Smith was injury prone. This is his 12th year in the NFL, playing at one of the most physically demanding positions in sports, left tackle, because you're often going against the best pass rusher on the other side. And we know in Tyron Smith's time in Dallas, he's played some great pass rushers for the Giants. Think about guys like, say, Justin Tuck. You think about guys in Philadelphia that have been great. Guys in Washington. Washington is pretty much Tyron Smith's whole career, has always had an elite defensive line. And obviously other teams the Cowboys have played. He's had to go against the best of the best pass rushers. He's had to be one of the better run-blocking left tackles because Dallas obviously had DeMarco Murray having that big 2014 season and then early in Zeke's career, right? So physically demanding position. He was very reliable early in his career, but eventually those hits, those bumps and bruises, they take their toll. And once you get into the double digits of your career, I mean, this isn't Tom Brady. This isn't playing quarterback. This is playing left tackle. That is brutal on your body. So we knew. We, the fans, knew. So certainly the Cowboys had to know that Ty Smith has been dealing with these type of injuries for quite some time. And they still didn't have a backup plan. They still didn't have a backup plan. They drafted the kid, Ty, I'm blanking on his name. Not Ty Smith. Oh my goodness. Tyler Smith. Was it Tyler Smith? I think that was the kid's name that they drafted this year, right? Tyler Smith out of college. Left guard. They're putting a left guard and they're saying, hey, how about moving to left tackle? Oh, really? Okay. So he's going to be going against those elite pass rushers in Tampa week 1 as a rookie when he led college football in penalties. Led college football in penalties for a Mike McCarthy coach team. Boy, that's a good combination. Right? You having to play those pass rushers in Philly. Okay. You're having to play all these, Tennessee's got elite pass rushers late in the season. If Ty Smith isn't back by then, come on now. Cincinnati has a good pass rush. So you're throwing in a heavily penalized college offensive lineman into a left tackle spot to protect a $40 million quarterback. Even if he plays well, the heck are you going to do with the left guard spot? Okay, Connor Williams was a problem, and not in a good way, by the way. A problem at left guard. I always called him this show, he was Mr. Holding. It was always holding offense number 52. Okay, that's what he was. So who are you going to put at left guard? Not to mention right tackle. Okay, Terrence Steele, I've always said I think he is a more natural fit at left tackle than right tackle. So you've lost now 3 of your starting offensive linemen from a year ago are gone. Connor Williams left in free agency. Ty Smith's done for at least done until December. Lyle Collins went to Cincinnati. Add to the fact, Michael Gallup gone for the foreseeable future. Probably for, I would guess, another month and a half. Okay? You dealt with losses on the defensive side of the ball with Randy Gregory. So all these injuries have piled up in Dallas. You trade Amari Cooper, which I didn't hate. My issue with the Amari Cooper trade is the fact that they did it too darn early and got a 5th-round pick when you see some of these other teams getting a haul for receivers that are about at Amari Cooper's level, if not a little worse than Amari Cooper. Dallas only got a 5th-round pick for him. It's a poorly run front office. They did not have a backup plan. They have not had a backup plan for 4 years now. And we're once again seeing them have to pay the price for it. Jerry Jones, I brought him up earlier. He was on First Take this morning at the Star in Dallas, Texas, in front of all the loyal Cowboys fans. And they were asking him about, it was either Stephen A. I think it was Stephen A. asked him about Michael Irvin. It was Michael Irvin or Stephen A. asked Jerry Jones about Ezekiel Elliott and his contributions to the team. And this is what Jerry had to say.
There is no question he was limited. Nobody wanted to say that, but he was very limited. He's in the best shape he's ever been in. Now, it is still a fact. We go as Zeke goes. I know it's a lot on Dak's shoulders, but we go as Zeke goes. He's very capable of being everything we've ever wanted to be. The wild card, though, is the guy that's playing beside him, Pollard.
That's right.
And so we put Pollard in some plans that with Zeke,
right,
for the defenses to have to work against midweek and be ready to play. Then you've got Pollard. We really like where we are at running back, but it all starts and stops with Zeke.
And you wonder, I mean, when I say Dak Prescott should want out of Dallas as soon as possible, people act like I got 5 heads. This is like just literally a step above what the New England Patriots are doing offensively. It is a quarterback's league and an offensive league more than it has ever been before in NFL history. And the Patriots have put no money into offense. Heck, they're not even putting money into coaching offense. They're having defensive coordinators and special teams guys coaching their offense. And in Dallas, they're basically just a step better. They haven't invested at the wide receiver position. I mean, come on, James Washington, Jalen Tolbert. That's what we're relying on this year. They're going to bring back an old Cole Beasley, possibly. Michael Gallup's hurt. CeeDee Lamb, I'm not quite sold on him being a true blue number 1 elite wide receiver in this league until I see it. But we go as Zeke goes. This is why the Dallas Cowboys have not been to even an NFC championship game in 26 years. Going on 27, because this is not a Super Bowl contender whatsoever. Like I said, when I read the report by Todd Archer, who is a very, very respected reporter, excellent at his job for the Cowboys, works for ESPN. But when I read his article last week talking about how the Cowboys are wanting to see this year, like they're kind of privately thinking, okay, let's see if Dak can carry us. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Buffalo has put all their money into offense. We know, listen, they spent money to go get Von Miller on defense. But Buffalo has invested heavily on the offense to help Josh Allen. Kansas City has done the same for Patrick Mahomes. Tampa has done the same for Tom Brady. They are doing that in Cincinnati. Look at how Cincinnati invested in their offensive line to help protect Joe Burrow because they understand how important he is to the success of that team. Baltimore has invested in that offensive line for Lamar Jackson. Derek Carr, the Raiders finally reward him with Devontae Adams. All of these teams with top 10 level quarterbacks. Chargers with Justin Herbert. Rams with Matt Stafford, Broncos with Russell Wilson. All these teams that are sure about their quarterbacks even the teams that aren't sure about their quarterbacks. Miami, they're putting Tyreek Hill around him. They're putting Cedric Wilson around him. They're getting the Mostert kid, the running back. They got the left tackle from New Orleans. They brought back Mike Gesicki. They drafted Jalen Waddle last year. Even teams that aren't quite sold on their quarterbacks are doing everything they can to make sure their guy is being put in the best position to succeed. And Dallas is doing the exact opposite. So yeah, Tyron Smith's injury is a big deal, without question. But what it points to more than anything else is organizational chaos and organizational dysfunction that has been present in the Dallas Cowboys ever since the day that Jerry Jones fired Jimmy Johnson in 1994. It's as simple as that. It has been downhill from there. We know they won the Super Bowl, obviously, in 1995 with Barry Switzer. But let's be real. You look at that Dallas roster in 1995, it's one of the greatest rosters ever put together in NFL history. Basically, it's the roster that won back-to-back Super Bowls, and they added Deion Sanders, who's the greatest corner of all time. Of course they were going to win the Super Bowl. It was a foregone conclusion. Dallas was going to win that Super Bowl that season. And ever since, they have failed to qualify for an NFC championship game. In that span, they have won, is it 3 playoff games? 3 playoff games. So when I say that Dallas is a poorly run franchise, when I say that Jerry Jones has too much power, I mean something else too. I played the clip from that First Take interview from this morning. But what struck me when I was watching it and listening to it on the radio on my drive home is how many scheme-related questions that Stephen A. Smith and Michael Irvin, not a shot at them, but it's become kind of the norm. How many football scheming type questions are being asked of Jerry, not Mike McCarthy, not Dak, not Kellen Moore, the offensive coordinator, Jerry. Because essentially, because he's the owner and the general manager, he is making the football-related decisions. And that has always been the problem in Dallas since 1994. It is a 10-win football team, if that. They get to the playoffs because they have a monster on the defensive side of the ball in Micah Parsons, and because they have, without question, one of the 10 best quarterbacks in the National Football League, Dak Prescott. They will win the NFC East in part because Giants are a mess. Washington, they're not in a whole lot better situation than the Giants, and Philadelphia, as good as they are this year, and I believe they have a better roster than Dallas, I have major, major questions about Jalen Hurts' ability to throw the football in key situations. That is the only reason. I mean, swap Dallas and the Raiders. Put the Raiders in the NFC East and put the Cowboys in the AFC West. Raiders win the East easily, and Dallas comes in last in the AFC West easily. 10-7, despite a pretty easy schedule. I think it was the second easiest schedule in the league this year, according to NFL.com. Easy schedule, but they will go 10-7, win a below-average division, and they will get knocked out immediately in the wild card game once again by second place in the NFC West. Is it the Niners? Is it the Rams? Is it the Cardinals? You choose. But one of those 3 teams will end Dallas's season. It'll either be January 14th of next year or January 15th. I'm going to say they scheduled Dallas for a Sunday game, so we're going to say January 15th, 2023, the Dallas Cowboys season comes to an end against the second place winner of the NFC West. It is as predictable as it gets. Man, I'll tell you, it never ceases to amaze me. Never ceases to amaze me about this organization. It's not well run. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts. It's not well run. Maybe they never knew that a Tyron Smith injury this serious, one that could keep him out. It's August, so like 3.5, 4 months. Maybe they didn't see that coming, but they had to know Ty Smith's going to miss some time this year because he always does. And I'm not necessarily faulting Ty Smith for that because he was very reliable early in his career. We're starting to see this a little more with Zach Martin, who's a little younger than Ty Smith, but we know over the past 4 years, he's missed more and more and more time because, listen, left tackle is a brutal position, especially on a team like the Dallas Cowboys who like to run the football a lot. It's tough. It's tough getting in there amongst the big guys. John, and I give him credit for this, and I've honestly kind of taken it and run with it. John commented, "It's Cooper Kupp." Talking about me. Yeah, I guess I kind of look like Cooper Kupp today. I'll take that as a compliment. I call Cooper, ever since John first said that, I've called Cooper Kupp my twin ever since. If my twin is the only Triple Crown winner / Super Bowl MVP in the same season guy in NFL history, I'll take that as my twin happily. My man James Scott, Across the Pond Sports Network, says the Cowboys actually make the playoffs. Again, yes, I think they win the division. They go 10-7, and they will lose to second place in the NFC West. Again, I will let you, the audience, choose who you think it'll be. Do the Rams come in second place? Possibly. Maybe they have some injuries. Maybe the Stafford thing with his elbow, maybe that hurts them a little bit, but they'll still make the playoffs. It's still a loaded division, though. Does Arizona jump San Francisco and get in second? Do the Niners come in second to the Rams? It will be one of those teams. Rams, Cardinals, Niners will knock Dallas out on January 14th or January 15th of 2023, and that will be all she wrote for the Dallas Cowboys this season. And John says Philly's winning the division. Well, listen, man, I won't be shocked. Philly is a better team than Dallas. They're better coached. They got a better run game, better defense, better offensive line, better weapons. Frankly, and I cannot stand Philly fans. Cannot stand it. This is one of my least favorite fan base, not just the Eagles, but Phillies and 76ers and Flyers. I mean, I barely even watch hockey, but I don't like Flyers fans because it's Philadelphia. Okay? It's one of the worst fan bases in sports. It's not as bad as Cleveland, but it's bad. Okay? They got a better home field advantage than the Cowboys do. I mean, as great as Cowboys fans are, and I've always given Cowboys fans this, man, loyal fan base. I mean, ride or die. Always giving Cowboys fans that. But man, it seems like every year there's like a couple games a season where there are, like when San Francisco comes down, or even when Denver came into town last year. Denver was not going to make the playoffs. Dallas was riding high. It was Dak's first game back after the injury that kept him out of the Minnesota game. And not to mention Denver destroyed Dallas in that game. But there was like a sea of orange in the stands at Jerry World. I'm like, what? Like, what is going on? Like Denver is and Denver has a big fan base too, but has taken over Jerry World. The Niners fans in the wild card game took over Jerry World. So the Cowboys don't really have much of a home field advantage. Ryan Flowers, Clutch Sports Talk Podcast. He's back, by the way. Go check out his show. Hope to have him on soon. He said, quote, "I don't see how people are so optimistic on the Cowboys." And folks, Ryan is a lifelong Dallas Cowboys fan, and he's saying this. I mean, trust me, this dude loves the Cowboys. He said, and again, I'll read it again. He says, "I don't see how people are so optimistic on the Cowboys." I don't either. Like I saw ESPN Power Rankings had Dallas ranked at 10th, like the 10th best team in the league. I'm like, man, y'all must have smoked something this afternoon. Because if you're telling me only 9 teams are better than Dallas, I mean, I can think of off the top of my head. Let's start NFC. And NFC isn't even that good. Rams are absolutely better than Dallas. Okay. I think the Niners, absolutely better than Dallas. Tampa Bay is better than Dallas. I think Philly's better than Dallas, even though I have Dallas winning the division. Okay. Let's see. You've got the NFC North. I think Minnesota's better than Dallas. So that's 5 right there. So let's go the AFC. Okay. Buffalo is 100% better. Kansas City's better. Chargers are better. Raiders are better. Broncos are better. That's 10 right there. And we could do this all day. Colts are better. Titans, I feel like, are on equal footing. NFC South, NFC. No, that's true. I honestly, I think Miami's a little better than Dallas. I just don't really trust Tua. I'll talk more about Tua tomorrow. Yeah, and Ryan says too many things to overcome, not to mention the schedule. And again, the schedule is reportedly, according to NFL.com, I think based on last year's win-loss record or whatever, the second or third easiest schedule in the league. But they do have some tough stretches there. They got road games. You know, I'm not high on Green Bay this year, but they're still very tough to beat at Lambeau. They got to play at Green Bay, and then the following week go at Minnesota, who I think is going to win the NFC North. Obviously, they got Tampa and Cincinnati to start the season. There's a stretch late in the year where they got Philly and Tennessee, which is a road game. So there's some tough stretches. There's some, nice patches. There's a stretch where they've got Detroit and Chicago. And I have said since the beginning on this show, you mark my words, they're going to lose one of those games. I'm not sure who it's going to be to. I'm leaning Detroit, and I'm not high on Dan Campbell. Love the guy as a person. Love the guy as a person. But Detroit or Chicago will beat Dallas this season. But you mark my words, they will. John says, yeah, Jerry World is not the same anymore. It is not. And plus, man, I don't know how they didn't know that the sun was going to come into the stadium as bad as it does. I mean, those late afternoon games in Dallas, like when the sun shines through the stadium, it is brutal. It is like impossible to see depending on what side of the field you're on. Ryan says Bucks, Bengals, Rams, and Giants to start, and they play Washington after their week 3 game against the Giants. I think they'll beat the Giants in Washington early in the season. I think Bucks, Bengals, it's easy to say they'll go 1-1 if not 0-2. So it could be a rough start to the season for the Cowboys. Ryan says Jerry's World has always been that. Nothing beats good old Texas Stadium. Yeah, man, Texas Stadium was classic. It was classic. I think Texas Stadium, if I'm not mistaken, was the first. It was kind of the first of its kind. It was the first stadium to have a retractable roof. So if, say, maybe the weather wasn't great, or maybe if it was too hot, they would shut the roof in the stadium, or if it was perfect conditions, they'd open the roof. Well, I think it was the first time that a stadium had that in the NFL. And I remember, I forgot who the Cowboys player was, but back in the day, there was a Cowboys player who said that the reason they've got that roof in the stadium is sort of the hole that you can see inside, was so that God could watch his favorite team play. So, goes to, I guess, sort of the arrogance of the Cowboys, even back in the day. And yeah, John puts it best. No home field advantage. Nope. All right, I've talked enough Cowboys today. I'm cowboyed out. Let's move back to the NBA for a second. So I was going to bed last night, and this one kept me up for like an extra 10 minutes because I was just kind of laughing my behind off at it. It was great. But by the way, going back to, Ryan wanted to clarify. Ryan says it was not retractable. I worked there. Okay, so appreciate you clarifying, Ryan. He says, yeah, Texas Stadium did not have a retractable roof. My bad. But it did have, similar to AT&T Stadium, it did have a sort of like this see-through and hole at the top of at the roof of the stadium that you could see in, which I guess that was the first of its kind. But it was something in the stadium was the first of its kind, but I guess, according to Ryan, it was not the retractable roof. See, now I'm curious what the first retractable roof was. I'll have to Google that when I'm done with the show. Maybe during the show. We'll see. But moving to the NBA, oh man, the Lakers, they're always good for a laugh, aren't they? So they traded for Patrick Beverley. And to be fair to the Lakers, they didn't give up much to get him. They gave up Stanley Johnson. They gave up Taylor Horton-Tucker. So there goes the THT experiment in Los Angeles. So many Laker fans were hyping up THT like he was going to be the next, like, Luka Doncic or something. I was like, I never saw what the Lakers fans were talking about. Point is, he's gone. Stanley Johnson's gone. Patrick Beverley's in. To me, it plays into two things. Number one, the biggest thing is, I think the Lakers are trying to piss off Russell Westbrook as much as humanly possible, so that he requests a trade and they get him out as soon as they can. Now, I'm reading reports, I may talk about this a little more tomorrow, that they could go try and get a guy like Miles Turner and Buddy Hield, which, I said on the show a year ago, they should have gotten Buddy Hield with the assets that they had, but instead they traded those assets for Russell Westbrook, and we see how that ended. But I think they are trying to tick off Russell Westbrook as much as humanly possible, because we know about the meeting between the new head coach, Darvin Ham, LeBron James, and Anthony Davis. Russell Westbrook was not in that meeting, okay? And talking about the goals that they have for the Lakers this season. And all of those goals, you can go back and read them, felt like a shot at Westbrook, okay? And now they trade for a guy who, Westbrook has a lot of enemies in the NBA. Probably none more so than Patrick Beverley. And they trade for Patrick Beverley, so he's Russell Westbrook's teammate now. We know about, in 2013, how the feud kind of all started, and I'm definitely on Russell's side in this play, because I think it was a dirty play by Patrick Beverley. But Russell, it was early in a playoff game. The Thunder are playing the Rockets. Russell's dribbling to the sideline. He is clearly, everybody can see it. He's, about to make the timeout call, calling timeout on the sideline right in front of the official. And as Russell Westbrook is calling timeout, Patrick Beverley dives right into his legs. And he's had knee issues ever since. So I get where Russell's ticked off at Patrick Beverley there. Okay, it's a dirty play. It was a flat-out dirty play. Okay, but ever since, they've had their back and forths. Russell Westbrook famously said about 3 years ago, after playing the Clippers, who Patrick Beverley played for at the time, this notion that Patrick Beverley is a great defender, and Russell Westbrook said after the game, he said, man, he fools y'all. Pat Bev fool y'all, man. And a lot of players have said similar things. Kevin Durant said that about Pat Bev. And so you sort of have that dynamic going there. And so with this feud that these guys have had for darn near a decade, they're teammates now. So this tells me, I gotta be honest, I'm not sure Russ is going to be on the roster on opening night. If he is, I mean, I've said in the show, I think he's going to be gone by the deadline. Now I'm not so sure if he's not going to be there on opening night. So that felt like, and listen, Pat Bev is a, he's a good 3-point shooter. We know he's a very good defender. He's not a great defender like some people try to tell you. Okay, when you think about great guard defenders, Marcus Smart is better, and Drew Holiday, to me, is the premier defensive guard in the NBA, without a question. Pat Bev is not in either of those guys' leagues. Okay, Drew Holiday is the best defender. Marcus Smart's the reigning defensive player of the year. Pat Bev's not in their league. But the point is, adds defense to a Lakers team that needs it, adds some, he's still relatively young, he's about 30, adds some fresher legs to the Lakers, so it's a good pickup. It's a good pickup. The Lakers got better today. So in that case, and they didn't give up much to get Patrick Beverley, it's a good trade for them. It's not going to change life or anything. I mean, Patrick Beverley said a few months ago on ESPN, he said, he literally said, if the Lakers trade for me, we're going to the Western Conference Finals. No, you're getting knocked out in the first round if you even get to the playoffs. But that's neither here nor there. But it's kind of hilarious because it's starting to feel a little bit like that first LeBron Lakers team. Remember, it was LeBron, and then it was some weird pieces. I remember they added Rondo and Lance Stevenson and JaVale McGee, and they already had kids they were trying to develop like Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram and Kyle Kuzma and Josh Hart. They had Zubas, who's the center now in LA with the Clippers. It was just a weird roster. That's what it's starting to feel like. You add, obviously, Lonnie Walker from San Antonio, which was a decent pickup. They haven't re-signed Melo. Okay, you trade for Patrick Beverley. It's, bring back Austin Reeves. Okay, he was one of their few bright spots last year. But it's an odd, they weren't able to bring back, Malik Monk. That's a weird roster for the Lakers this season. So I still hold true to the fact I think they're going to be a play-in team, and we'll see. I mean, I think they will be like the 7 or 8 seed and have to win a play-in game, maybe 2 if they're the 9 or 10 seed. I feel like they're the 8 seed. They'll be the 8 seed this season. They'll win 42, 43 games, and they'll get into the playoffs. That's my guess. Because if they're the 8 seed or 7 seed, they got 2 chances. Okay, they got to win 1 out of 2 games to get in the playoffs. It's LeBron James we're talking about. He'll win them one of those 2 games, and they'll get in, and they'll get bounced by. You pick your team. Is it Golden State? Is it the Clippers? Is it Memphis? Personally, I hope it's Golden State. I hope that we get to knock the Lakers out. That'd be fun. Let's see. And he said, Ryan Flowers said that's a LeBron move. Yeah, well, most of them are. And then he says, Pat Beverley, Pat Beverley's a drop in the bucket of Lakers list of problems. Yeah. And I don't think, again, compared, sort of playing off your comment, Ryan, if we're talking about the Lakers' legitimate problems, I wouldn't even consider Pat Bev that. I wouldn't even consider him a problem, considering the stuff the Lakers got to deal with. When you're talking about Russell Westbrook, when you're talking about a new head coach, when you're talking about Rob Pelinka, when you're talking about Jeannie Buss and her, as I've always criticized her for, trusting way too many people in the Lakers front office as opposed to a couple, 2, 3 brilliant basketball minds. As I always say, I think that's why she sent out the Kobe tweet last month. I think her relationship with LeBron hasn't been great. It's not bad, but it's not been on the greatest of terms. But I saw this last night. I just had to laugh. I love it. I love that in the biggest circus in the NBA, you add Patrick Beverley. It's the same man. It's the same man who, with the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Timberwolves win a play-in game. And they actually beat Patrick Beverley's old team, the Los Angeles Clippers, okay? The Timberwolves beat the Clippers in the play-in game. This wasn't the Western Conference Finals. This wasn't, it darn sure wasn't the NBA Finals. A play-in game to be the 7 seed. And Patrick Beverley runs up. It wasn't like he hit a buzzer beater or anything, okay? The outcome had been decided with about 10 seconds left. They had plenty of time to soak in the moment. And when the buzzer sounds, Patrick Beverley runs to the scorer's table, takes his jersey off, throws it into the crowd, and starts crying. I'm like, dude, it's a playing game. Like it'd be one thing if Patrick Beverley had like never been to the playoffs before. He's been numerous times with the Rockets and with the Clippers to that point. It's like, dude, come on now. I mean, Karl Anthony Towns off the corner, kissing his girlfriends. They're celebrating. Anthony Edwards is going up to the scorer's table with Pat Bev. It's like, dude, you didn't just win the championship. Come on, dude. Like that's the Lakers going to have those kind of antics with Patrick Beverley. I'm looking forward to it. And the fact, too, that he's going to be on the Lakers bench, or at least on the Lakers roster for opening night in the Chase Center when the Chase Center's quick story, the Chase Center's very first game. Okay, Patrick Beverley was playing for the Los Angeles Clippers. The Clippers came into Golden State and just crushed my Warriors. It was the year my Warriors won 15 games. Long season. But during that game, Patrick Beverley told Steph Curry, and both guys confirmed it after the game. Patrick Beverley, it was like during a stoppage of play, somebody was shooting free throws, and Steph was kind of standing off to the side, and Patrick Beverley, we know the annoying kind of pest that he could be. He walks up to Steph Curry. This is after the Warriors had just made 5 straight finals, and we're kind of in the gutter. Pat Bev walks to Steph. He says, the last 5 years were yours. The next 5 years are mine. And Steph reportedly turned to him and he said, aren't you 31? Like, bro, you're out of your mind. And so now 3 years later, Patrick Beverley's coming back to the Chase Center along with the Lakers, of course, which makes it even more sweet. And Steph and everybody, Clay, Draymond, Iguodala, all of them, Looney, they're all going to be getting their rings. It just makes it that much sweeter. I laughed when I saw it. Does he make the Lakers better? I think he does, especially given what all that they had to give up for him. But does he elevate them from like a 6 or 7 seed to a 4 seed? Nah. No. West is loaded this year. It wasn't last year. West is going to be better this year with a lot of guys coming back from injury. So this does not move the Lakers any closer to being a championship contender, to say the least. All right, moving on. Again, sticking the NBA, we got some unfortunate news this afternoon out of Oklahoma City that Chet Holmgren is going to be out for the season with a foot injury. Suffered in a pickup game against, actually happened to be against LeBron James. And you saw the play where he got hurt. It's online. And first of all, before I even address the whole injury and everything, there's one thing I have to push back on that I'm hearing a lot of people in the media saying, and I totally disagree with it, talking about how players, especially young players, shouldn't be playing in these, like the Drew League, or playing like at Rucker Park. Remember what years ago when KD went to Rucker Park and scored, was it 55, 65, whatever it was? Okay, basically playing these pickup games in these iconic gyms or iconic parks. Okay, basically saying like you need to stop playing these. I completely disagree. Completely disagree. How do you think these guys get better? You play. It's what I say about young quarterbacks all the time. If you think they're ready, put them in. Because as Allen Iverson once said, man, we're talking about practice. There's only so much better you can get in practice as opposed to the real thing. Now, obviously, we know playing in these pickup games isn't the real thing, but it's darn close when you're playing against other NBA players. I mean, you're seeing pictures on Instagram of Trey Young. Like these guys play against each other in the offseason. And if you suffer an injury, how is it any different as if you suffer that injury in a game? You got to get better in the offseason. I mean, I'd much rather a guy come in shape, ready to go. Maybe he's got a little nagging injury, but we can deal with that, right? If he's got to sit out the first couple weeks of the regular season, okay, fine. As opposed to a guy who didn't play basketball in the offseason, coming in out of shape, not ready to go, and he pulls his hamstring early in the season, which often hamstring injuries, especially if it's like a nagging pull, is a lack of conditioning, is a lack of taking care of your body in the offseason. Okay, I'd much rather a guy come in with maybe a nagging injury from playing games in the summer against other NBA players as opposed to the alternative. Okay, so I'm not going to be one of these people in the media that are bashing Chet Holmgren for playing in a pickup game, especially against LeBron, because we know about Chet's slender, to say the least, frame. He needs to get used to playing against the big boys, especially while he hopefully works to put on some weight. He weighs about 190, but Steph weighs about 190, and he's 6'3". Chet Holmgren's 7 feet 1 inch tall, okay? So being able to put on muscle. I'm not concerned. You know me, I wasn't as high on Chet Holmgren as I was Jabari Smith. Heck, even as I was on guys like Jaden Ivey or Paolo Banchero. Okay, I felt, a lot of people bash the Magic for taking Banchero number one. I'm liking what I'm seeing from this kid. I think this kid has some edge that, we see a lot of Duke kids that maybe we don't see the edge for them in college, but once they get in the NBA, sort of playing outside of that system, not a shot at Coach K, but more spacing in the NBA, more room to work offensively, we start to see that kind of come out of them. I think we're going to see that from Paolo Banchero. I think we're going to see that definitely from Jabari Smith, who has a much more developed offensive game than Chet Holmgren, who has a more NBA-ready body at his age than Chet Holmgren. So in terms of him missing his rookie year, that's not a concern to me, okay? I'm not a huge fan of Ben Simmons, but Ben Simmons missed his rookie year due to injury. He still was pretty good when it was all said and done. My issue with Ben Simmons is whether or not he even cares about the game of basketball. That's another segment for another show. But Blake Griffin missed his rookie year. He had a pretty good career, right? I mean, he's still in the NBA, but he made some all-star games. Like it didn't sap his ability to be a great player. Most notably, Joel Embiid. He didn't just miss his rookie season. He missed his second season due to injury. He was drafted in 2014 and didn't play in the NBA until October of 2016. He's been pretty good. He's been the MVP race. Heck, man just led the league in scoring last year. He's, in my view, the best center in the league. I'd put him over Jokic. Easily a top 10 player in the NBA. So I don't think missing his rookie year is going to be like the end of Chet Holmgren. But again, what I worry about is whether his very slender frame will hold up against some of these. He's a boy playing against men, against grown men playing against, and the injury was suffered against LeBron James. A lot bigger than Chet Holmgren, to say the very least. I mean, I saw a picture on the internet today of Kawhi Leonard working out in the gym. And I'm like, dude, Kawhi's arm is bigger than Chet Holmgren's body. So that's going to be something, hopefully, in the rehab. Obviously, I'm not sure if this will require surgery. It probably will. Getting through the rehab, but as it's going, obviously being around the team as well, putting on some muscle in the process. That's what a lot of players have done in the past. In the time, use Steph Curry as an example. In 2019 season, 4 games in, Steph breaks his hand and misses, was it 4 months, I think? Yeah, 4 months. Okay. And in that time, and especially, once the pandemic hit, Steph put on 10 pounds of muscle. Okay, so in that sort of free time, it's a foot injury. So there's certain workouts and exercises you could do to strengthen that upper half of your body. And especially once the foot continues to heal, to do the same. Now, while the foot continues to heal and gets to a place where he can start playing basketball again sometime next year, next spring, next summer, he can sort of adjust his game to his changes he's made to his body. That's what you got to do. That's something that Giannis struggled with a little bit once he bulked up, but has now sort of gotten used to. He's grown into his body a little bit. I think Chet Holmgren will have to do the same. So as far as this injury, this shouldn't be like the end of players playing in the summer. That is stupid. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Players get better playing. Okay, people say that don't really know basketball, be completely honest with you. But number two, this doesn't mean it's the end of Chet Holmgren, him missing his rookie year. A lot of great players have not played their rookie year due to injury. However, I still wonder if his body will be able to hold up against, the greats in the NBA. Heck, just regular players in the NBA. I mean, I just finished talking about Patrick Beverley. Patrick Beverley's, I think, for his size, pound for pound, is significantly stronger than Chet Holmgren. So that's something I worry about. And people have brought up Kevin Durant and how Kevin Durant couldn't, I forgot what the number was, but he couldn't bench press what was a pretty, low weight at the combine in 2007. And people are like, oh, you can't draft him because he's not strong. Difference is KD's a perimeter player. Chet Holmgren's a center. If KD was a center, it'd be a different story. Guys would just be bullying him down low. It's not the case with Chet Holmgren. Okay, he's going to be down low against, how's Chet going to fare against Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic or against the great centers in today's game? Heck, even against the great, wing guys who, like to play back to the basket a lot. It's few and far between these days with the evolution of the three-point shot, but those guys still are in the league today. So that is something I'm concerned about with him long-term, without a question. But again, we'll obviously wish him the very best in recovery, and hopefully he'll be back playing basketball by the 2023-24 season. All right, last topic of the day. Jeez, a lot has happened this week in sports, and don't forget, okay, 2 weeks from tonight, 2 weeks and an hour from tonight, we get real life NFL football back. Bills, Rams. We've been waiting this for a long time. It's gonna be fun. Before we get in our last topic, though, let's see. We got some preseason games tonight. Yeah, Packers play the Chiefs tonight at 8 o'clock on the NFL Network, and the 49ers play the Texans at 8:15 on Amazon Prime Video, who is going to be doing the Thursday night football games this season. So, and then tomorrow you got 4 games. Saturday, you've got 8 games. And on Sunday, you have 2 games. By the way, Tom Brady, I mentioned at the start of the show, Tom Brady is going to play on Saturday night against the Indianapolis Colts in the Bucs' final preseason game. Todd Bowles announced today. So 2 weeks off. I'm sure they'll probably play him just a couple of drives. Tom Brady is a guy, he's sort of an outlier among veteran quarterbacks. The majority of quarterbacks, if you're 35 plus, you do not play in the preseason. Drew Brees didn't play at the end of his career in the preseason. Aaron Rodgers hasn't played in a while in the preseason. Hey, listen, I get it. 35 years old. You don't want to, get him hurt out there in a meaningless game. But Tom Brady, over the course of his career in New England and even in Tampa, this is his second preseason in Tampa. He tends to play. So, we'll see what we get from the Goats at 7:30 Eastern at Indianapolis. So that should be interesting to watch before the Bucs play the Cowboys 2 weeks after that. But speaking of Tom Brady, let's talk about his former team and the offensive struggles. Let me rephrase this. The predictable offensive struggles continue. Okay, so let me read this tweet. Respected Patriots reporter Greg A. Bedard, I think I'm saying his name correctly, Bedard, he tweeted, quote, this is a couple days ago during a joint practice with the Raiders. He tweeted, quote, Raiders have completely dominated both sides so far. First 3 Patriots snaps in team. Stuff, sack. Jones, talking about Mac Jones. Jones, 5 of 9 and 7 on 7. Henry reception, only 1 down the field. Offense looks deflating coming off. Carr sliced up Pats in 7 on 7. Devontae Adams is unfair. Well, what's news there? But he continued. It got worse. Worst offensive practice of camp. Jones picked off to end awful 2-minute. He was pissed and paced the sidelines after. Run defense only positive today. Pass defense carved up by Carr, Adams, and Renfro. No Waller. No Darren Waller, and the Raiders still absolutely ate up the New England Patriots defense, which is looked at as the strength of this team. I will reiterate, this is a 7-win football team. New England's schedule to start is pretty easy. I mean, they have a tough game at Lambeau that I think they're going to lose. When you look at the Patriots' early season schedule, it's not bad, okay? They start off the bat with Miami. That's a go-either-way game. Miami in recent years has beaten New England quite frequently. As a matter of fact, I don't think New England's beaten Miami since week 1 of 2020, so it's been a minute. Okay, then they play at Pittsburgh. That's a go-either-way game. Then you got Ravens, Packers. Then you got Detroit. Then you have Browns. Then you have Chicago, the Jets. And then you got the Colts, who I think are going to be a sleeper team this year, and the Jets again. Then, starting from Thanksgiving Day on, it is brutal. At Minnesota, home against the Bills, at Arizona, at Vegas, the team that just carved up the Patriots in joint practice, against the AFC champion Cincinnati Bengals, home against the Dolphins, at Buffalo. And you're telling me that they're going to do this when their best receivers are Nelson Aguilar, Jacoby Myers, and Kendrick Bourne. When their offense is led by a quarterback who I've said since the day that man was drafted is below average, although, as I said a few weeks ago, I'll be defending him a lot in this show. As limited as I think he is, as much of a franchise quarterback I believe he is not, he has nothing to work with because he has a defensive coordinator, Matt Patricia, and a special teams coach, Joe Judge, working in unison to run the offense. So as limited as I think Mac Jones is, not a whole lot of young quarterbacks could succeed basically without an offensive coordinator. And reports are out of New England, reports out of training camp are Belichick has been running the offense at times, which I'm as limited as an offensive coach as Belichick has been in his career, I'm trusting him a heck of a lot more than I'm trusting Matt Patricia and trusting Joe Judge. So at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, the Patriots offense is painfully limited. Limited quarterback, bad receiving core. Offensive line has gotten worse and worse ever since the retirement of Dante Scarnecchia, their longtime great offensive line coach. The running game is Defense got worse in the offseason. It's a 7-win team. Okay, they got no shot at beating Buffalo, as loaded as the Bills are next year. Okay, Buffalo they just played Buffalo in the playoffs, and the Bills didn't punt. They literally had a perfect offensive game. They scored a touchdown on every single drive. And the Patriots lost 47-17. So, can't say if I were a Patriots fan today, and I know Grady Edwards, my man, is a big Patriots fan. I know a few Patriots fans. Don't get your hopes up about this season. This is a 7-win football team. Probably going to finish in third. Bills, to me, it's their division, no question about it. I think Miami's better than New England. As limited as Miami is at the quarterback position, they certainly got better than New England in the offseason, given their weapons and given their still pretty good defense. I think Miami will finish second, followed by New England, followed by the seemingly always last place Jets. So that's all I got for the New England Patriots today. I said from the moment it was either May or June that it was announced that Patricia and Joe Judge were going to run the offense. And I said, this is as bad as the Patriots offense is now. It just got significantly worse with guys who have made their living off of coaching defense and special teams, but now they're going to coach offense. They're going to coach the other side of the ball. It's a disaster. It just gets worse and worse in New England. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by. As always, be sure to catch Carving Up Live tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time on Facebook Live, YouTube, and on Twitter. Also, be sure to catch the Carving Up podcast on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, Anchor, as well as wherever you listen to your podcast. Be sure to like, share, comment, and most importantly, hit that big red subscribe button. Takes you literally 2 seconds, maybe even less. Just hit that big red subscribe button if you haven't already. Helps the channel grow exponentially. So, a little bit of preseason action tonight. Most importantly, though, we got football, real football. Week 1 is 2 weeks away. We're almost there, folks. SoFi, Bills, Rams, very well could be a Super Bowl preview. Who knows? So, until tomorrow night, have a great evening, everybody. Continue to stay safe out there. God bless you all. Peace out. The cheerleader went to the Lakers. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube. Be sure to click that big red subscribe button and go check out the other clips and full shows of Carving It Up Live. Have a blessed day.